Welcome to this NGWA Industry Connected video interview. Today I'm with NGWA incoming President David Traut, MGWC, CVCLD. David will receive the gavel at Groundwater Week 2023, December 5th through the 7th in Las Vegas, Nevada, and lead the association in 2024. Welcome, David. Thanks for your time today.
You're welcome, and it's glad to be here. Thank you.
First off, for those who don't know you, please introduce yourself and how you entered the industry.
Well, it was more of entered it by, I guess, an effort to find an easier way, and not by design by any means. My neighbor actually was my uncle, who was also a driller. And I had a little red wagon, and my job was to haul, when I was 15 years old, 5-gallon buckets of water from the farmyard down to the garden, which is 100 yards away. And by the time you get there, of course, half it splashes out. So talked to my uncle, and he says, well, why don't you put in a sand point? And I was maybe 15 years old. So he dropped off all the materials, and well, a couple days later and a bunch of calluses later and smashed fingers later, I actually had actual hand pump, typical old hand pump, no electricity out there, but it was a whole lot easier than pulling wagons full of water. So that was the first well I ever installed. And I had water right in the garden. So I guess I kind of got hooked there. It's like, wow, this is easy. So that's where I got started. Then after I graduated from school, I bounced around. I did heat reclaiming for the milk industry, reclaiming heat from milk and putting it in hot water. So that kind of got me into the heat reclaim, which is kind of like geothermal. And I got into water treatment. And then my uncle said, hey, I need somebody with water treatment experience. So that's where I started. And I started a water treatment division within his company. And then from there, I guess it's history. I guess my partner, Mark, and myself took over ownership of the company in 1982. And that makes me sound really old, but time went by really fast. So I must be enjoying it. I told my uncle at the time I was still involved with a partnership with my two brothers on a farm. And he comes to me one day and says, well, I understand you're farming with your brothers. I said, yeah, I do that on weekends. Well, how long are you going to keep working for me? I said, I'll work here till I get bored. Well, I can fairly say it's been 40 years later and I'm still not bored.
That's great. That's great. And as you know, the NGWA presidency is done in the blink of an eye. What will be both your short-term and long-term goals for 2024?
Well, one thing I recognized when I was a board member is we had lots of struggles with trying to get, I will say, a formal training or learning mechanism within our industry, because so many people get into this industry by, I work for my brother, I work for my uncle, I work for my grandpa, and that's how they got into the industry. So of course, they learned what they were taught by their mentor, maybe good habits, maybe bad habits, or somewhere in between. But I think that's what drove me to thinking, we got to have a vision here. And the vision has to be is we need to have a common set of rules, because yes, each state has different regulations. I understand that. But physics is physics. Physics doesn't change when I cross the border, cross the river, what have you. So if we can create a good set of training, that's what developed drilling basics. I think that will be an ongoing living document that we can change, update, and renew as needed, because it'll be an electronic platform versus a book format. So that's one of my goals, is to have a training mechanism, because I struggled when I was studying to get my master's and whatever. It was like, oh, it was just painful trying to find all the information needed, even though it didn't become relevant in my circles of the type of geology I was working in, but I still wanted to know that. Second thing is as you might be aware, is we're also working on a project called Business Pro. So that's going to be a business management model. And it's going to be a very good opportunity for people in the industry, whether they're small or large, to basically have a very good I guess, business management tools, so they can manage inventory, costing, the whole ball of wax. And I always look at it this way. My vision is you or I can grab our phone, and within 5 minutes, a few clicks of my fingers, I can order whatever my heart desires from Amazon. I can tell them where to ship it. I can bill myself, and if there's a mistake, it's my fault, right? Because there was no human involved. We're not going to get to that level, at least not anytime in my vision soon, but we need to start moving away from paper and doing things the old accounting ways. So we need to move to the next level of how the world is moving as far as running and operating a business. And when I leave, if them things are in place and moving forward, I will be very happy.
And you mentioned drilling basics online, and we'll get to a workforce development here in a minute. But before that, looking back, what have you learned from the past presidents of Brian Snelton and Jason House in those two individuals? And are there any other past presidents who you'd like to model your presidency after?
I have a number of comments on that, and I guess once in a while I'll make a comment in a meeting. It's like, if I'm the smartest guy in the room, we have a problem, guys. So I will start out with Brian Snelton. I guess I appreciated him because he has a well-rounded background. He worked in small companies, big companies, and he had a vision and he could see where we are headed as an industry. So that's what I learned from Brian. Mr. Jason House, current president, obviously he's an engineer. The thing I've learned from him is pay attention to details. Maybe that comes with the territory of being an engineer, but he's a very detailed individual, and I really learned that from him. I also learned something from Merritt, and that is when we're working on topics of discussion and we need to basically get something remedied, we're not going to beat a dead horse. I'll use that cliche. Either we got good ideas or we'll have to just move on, but we're not going to drag it out and not have a solution when we leave the meeting, because one of the most frustrating things for me is leave a meeting and we have no solution or decision. And then I'm going to throw Mr. Dave Heinrich, past president, to the mix as well. I really like his, I guess, government affairs savvy, and I've worked with him on the Minnesota level, handling a lot of things in Minnesota, and I really like his energy and his, I guess, creative way to attack a regulatory problem. And more often than not, we've come out on the positive side of our agenda. So I learned from people around me.
And workforce development is the most pressing need in the groundwater industry, as you know. And your company, Traut Companies, is a founding member partner of NGWA's Drilling Basics Online, which is a series of 5 groundwater training courses with future development of classroom and field courses. What role does Drilling Basics Online have in recruiting and training the next generation's workforce?
Well, we struggle like everybody, and I don't think there is a company in the drilling industry that can say they don't have a struggle trying to find talent and young individuals wanting to step in, work in our business, and at some point in time, hopefully maybe take the business over if that's in the cards. So I think part of the stigma might be is, number one, there's many people who probably don't even think they're qualified because they're afraid of what might be in the drilling industry. They maybe watched a movie about oil well drillers or something, and they see all the mud and all this stuff, but they don't understand it's not just a round hole in the ground. There are so many other technical factors to the well drilling industry that I don't believe the average public applicant understands. So I think there's some, I guess, training that needs to be done or whatever. We've developed some short videos of actual crews on site doing things that we use right in our recruitment, so people can actually click on it and they can actually see what they might be doing, so they have a more of a comfort level. You know, maybe instead of crawling on the roof and pounding shingles down or doing cement block laying, God, maybe that looks like fun. So I guess we have to figure out how to catch their curiosity, I guess, on, wow, I can do that.
Drilling Basics Online's new drill safety onboarding includes 3 courses necessary to get started in the industry. Can you highlight some of the key points made that are critical for new hires entering the industry?
Well, in the industry, what I find is, and where Drilling Basics has an onboarding thing, is the important thing is, number one, is going to be safety. A lot of individuals coming into this industry may have very little, unless you happen to get lucky and find some farm kid that actually has been in the history of operating big equipment since maybe he was in high school or teenager or younger even, it's important that an incoming person understands safety, because the worst thing we want to have is somebody not be prepared, not understand their surroundings, and have an injury or get hurt because they didn't understand. So number one is safety to get in. The second thing is basically safe behaviors, safe habits. Because if you don't have a safe habit, sooner or later, Murphy's going to come in and you're going to get hurt. So safety, and then basically personal injury and personal awareness of what can happen in our industry and what to watch out for, I think are the two main things that I would focus on a new individual coming into an industry that has no background in our industry.
Mm-hmm. And as a master groundwater contractor, what have you found to be the most effective way or ways to both teach and pass on your drilling knowledge to your employees and others in the industry?
Well, that is a challenge. I assume probably more than I should that people understand and know what I know. But if I was to give one, I guess, piece of advice, and I'm guilty of it as well, we get so busy every day doing what we're doing that we don't actually write down a time and say, this is going to happen, and this is what we're going to have a seminar within our building or with our crews. This is what we're going to teach. You can do it in the field if you're a small enough company, I'm sure, right there on the rig or whatever, but sometimes you have to have a sit down and you have to have maybe some more input material than just a verbal conversation. So we tailor all of our training between audio visual, because I believe that the younger generation, they grew up in a different area or a different environment, I should say, than I did. I mean, when I grew up, you got told something, you're supposed to retain it. You were given a book, you were supposed to read it, you're supposed to understand it and comprehend it. Most of our younger people today are more audio visual. Thank God for YouTube. There's tons of information out there. and you can learn a lot very quickly with the new platform. And that's what I think is exciting, is we can create a YouTube type platform for training. And yes, it'll be called Drilling Basics or Onboarding. And we can get that training done on a much more efficient basis than basically old school.
And learning face to face and just networking is also, has historically been a key aspect of our industry. And at Groundwater Week, the breakfast with the master groundwater contractors is from 7 to 8:30 on December 5th, the first day of the show. How has that been for you over the years, getting to mingle with folks who come in and want to chat with other fellow master groundwater contractors?
I think that is a good opportunity. I like the format on that, because the meetings I participated in, there was a lot of good questions for people who basically have questions, but they don't know who to ask. So it's been a very nice platform. And I think it's something that, I'd love to see even more participants than we've seen in the past there.
Okay, and your company does geothermal drilling. Will there be enough drillers to keep up with the expected demand of geothermal installations in the coming years based off the passage of the tax credits? And what advice can you share for anyone leery about diversifying into it?
Start looking for the next business opportunity, because I believe, and I don't think it's just me saying this, but when you look at, I guess, technology, geothermal almost has to be part of moving towards carbon neutral and climate change. If you look at, other countries like Germany, where electricity is expensive, geothermal is probably way ahead of our technology in some of the European Union states, because they struggle with energy costs. And if we're going to try and move towards carbon neutral, geothermal is going to have to be part of that equation, I believe. And so that's going to make for a need for investments in equipment, investments in human resources, and investments in training, because they all have to be done together.
And you live and work in a state where PFAS, contaminating groundwater, is common, unfortunately. What role does your company play in identifying, treating, and managing PFAS?
Well, it's been an interesting, I guess, evolution on PFAS. I've worked with some of the hot spots in Minnesota where the PFAS was created. And of course, the original thought was we're going to pump the water at many thousands of gallons per minute. We're going to filter it, clean it, and then we'll dump the clean water into the Mississippi River and let it go down to New Orleans. Well, that might have been a good first knee-jerk reaction, but at some point in time, we're realizing, well, now we became water miners and we're actually exporting our resource, and that's not a good thing if you do that 24/7, 365. I think what I've learned from PFAS, at least in our geologic setting, is it probably doesn't make good smart water policies if we're going to pump massive amounts of water, attempt to remove the PFAS, and then do what with the water? Where are you going to stack it? Where are you going to park it? You almost got to let it release it down to a tributary and it's going to go away. Well, we've just, sent away a huge resource that we need.
Mm-hmm.
Unless some technology changes in the actual remediation of a contaminated aquifer, I believe the situation is going to be is we're going to have to see some evolution and continuing different methodologies of actually removing PFAS, both on small and large scale basis, because I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. It's one of them things that we're probably going to be dealing with for the next 50 plus years or more. It's going to be there. We just have to figure out what is going to be the newest, greatest, best technology to actually remove it before we use it, because I don't think we currently have the technology, and I don't see it on the horizon where you can actually look at an aquifer and say, I'm going to clean up that whole aquifer by doing this procedure or that procedure. Just a comment I want to add on the PFAS thing. The first logic from some of the regulators we had is, okay, no problem. That shallow aquifer that's maybe at 300 feet or so, it's got PFAS in it, so let's not use it anymore. We'll require everybody to drill down to 600 plus feet and get away from it. Well, that was a first good advice, but within about a decade, guess what? We've just pulled it down to the lower aquifer, so now we have it in both aquifers. So drilling deeper is probably not the correct answer. It may be a short-term fix, but you have to think about the big picture. If I pump the water from the deepest aquifer, it's going to be recharged or replaced from some place. And if that someplace is contaminated, you just rapidly increase the timeline or sped up the timeline by which you're going to suck the contamination to the next aquifer, and you're going to have to deal with it at a much larger scale.
You've recently contributed to the new Water Well Wish program that provides water wells to people in need here in the United States. Why is this cause so important to you?
Well, I guess I look at it this way. The water well industry has been, I guess, more than great to me. It's my opportunity to give back. I do think there's some holes in our system where we, in the United States, have holes in our programs where we're helping other countries. Not that that's not a good, noble gesture, but we have people in our own backyard that have difficulties just getting daily water needs. And I think this is a great way to do it, and also bring recognition to our industry that most of the people in our water well industry are great salt of the earth type people, and they'll give you the shirt off your back if you ever needed it. Mm-hmm. We just got to give them an opportunity to basically contribute to the industry that's put them where they are.
And what would you say to a 20-year-old David Traut today, knowing what you know?
Learn all that you can learn. The water well industry is way more complex and way more possibilities and opportunities than I believed it had when I first walked in the door when I was 20 years old. I assumed it was as simple as just drilling a hole in the ground, because of course it's like anything. You don't know what you don't know. But once you understand, and the more you understand about water, you learn how precious it is. If we don't have water, I use this saying, if I don't have water, really nothing else matters. nothing else matters. It doesn't matter if it's technology or electricity or whatever, because if I don't have water, I can't sustain life. So nothing else matters. So it's going to be important that, people coming into the industry basically understand and learn how valuable they are. And like I say, when I walked in, I was maybe old school working for a company that basically just said, hey, go out, do your job and come back and we'll do it again tomorrow. Not too much focus was on where are we going. And I guess I've learned that, okay, we also have to look at the water resource going forward. It's important to understand and know where our water comes from, how we're going to manage it, because as the population of the United States grows, whether you're in the Southwest desert or in a water-rich state like Minnesota, we still have to be making smart water policies as you get more mature into your industry and you understand how things work.
And lastly, what are your hopes for the groundwater industry and what it'll look like in the next 10 years?
I think it's going to be exciting times. Yes, we're going to have our own set of issues like PFAS to deal with and so forth. Always going to have regulations, but I think the exciting thing is with AI coming into the picture, clearly, I would love to be able to sit at my desk, watch my computer, and actually help work with maybe a young driller who's in the field, and I can actually be interactive with his project right here and coach him and train him. I think we're going to see that. It's going on in other places in the drilling world. I think we're going to see basically a safer, better industry through technology, and also I'd like to have the population of the United States have a better respect for our industry, because I think we're underappreciated and underrespected for what we provide, because I don't believe people really understand groundwater. Joke we have inside here is when we're talking to some people, it's like, okay, water comes from the tower, milk comes from the store. How did it get there?
Right. Right. Well, thank you again for your time, David, and we look forward to seeing you take the gavel at Groundwater Week 2023 in December in Las Vegas.
Awesome. We're looking forward to meeting you there.